So it was a brisk Friday morning in Berkshire and my DPD guy delivered a lovely looking parcel from Cube Controls, and of course it was the Mercedes-AMG wheel they released a few months back. I've only just got it, so this review, or whatever you want to call it, is a little bit late to the party, but what can you do, eh? And also I don't feel particularly well, so if I look like and sound like arse, there's nothing I can do. I'm just trying to be consistent with YouTube, so I'm going to power on through, get the video out. But we're going to have a look at the Mercedes-AMG wheel that Cube Controls have released. And of course, being a Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS esports driver, I just think it's a nice little synergy. So first of all, thank you to Cube Controls for sending me the wheel. We will get into it and look into it very, very shortly. If you want to check the wheel out in more detail, look in the description. It will take you to their website where it has all the specs, and you can actually look at it for yourself and see if it's your cup of tea. Speaking of that, I do need one of those in a minute. Also, in the card above, I'm going to link you to the Boosted Media review. He is, without doubt, the best sim racing hardware review guy on YouTube. Super sound guy as well. If you want to check the wheel out in full detail, he literally goes from top to bottom. He doesn't miss anything. And if you're a proper nerd, which most of us are, he's your guy. So go and check that out if you really want to see how the wheel is. I'm just going to look over it today and give you my verdict. Let's quickly, because I just remembered I've left the box over there, unbox it. I just tripped and pulled my power cable out of my camera. Great. Let's try that again. Okay, to start with then, we've got the box, AMG, Mercedes, Cube Controls. I'm not going to open this up here really awkwardly because it's not going to work. I'm going to open it on the floor because my desk is too cluttered right now. So, to start with, nice foam piece. Are you ready to make it real? Obviously this wheel is a collaboration between Cube Controls and AMG, so it's a replica effectively of the GT2 race car that Mercedes do now, the one that recently came out in the ACC update. It's the same wheel in the track edition AMG cars. That's kind of cool. It's literally mimicking a wheel you can buy in a race car in real life. Second thing in the box, and obviously it's the main reason we're making this video, is the Holy Grail, the beautiful wheel itself. I mean, on the face of it, that is a lovely looking bit of kit, front and back. Well, I mean, we'll get into it in more detail in a minute, but that is nice. Nice. Obviously a foam cutout for the wheel, more foam. Then you're greeted by two small boxes. Let's quickly see what's in those. In the first one, you've got the wheel bag, which stops it getting dirty and just protects it a bit. You've also got a very important piece, the hub, which allows you to connect to the wheelbase, whatever wheelbase you're using, Simicube or Azatec, whatever it is. I'm using a Simicube Ultimate, and this is an optional extra. So you can buy the wheel without this, but in most cases I think you will need it. In the second box, we've got the toolkit. So you've got the tweezers there and all the Allen keys and stuff that you might need to get the wheel working, attached to the wheelbase, and everything you need though, I remember from previous Cube Control wheels, is in that bag. And also the cable, the magnetic cable that Cube Controls use now. That is also with that, which is good.
But wait! There's more!
Thank you. Thank you for watching my channel, and thank you for giving it a like and subbing as well. Thank you, for that, if you do that. Finally, you've got the sticker board with the Mercedes stickers on there as well, which for us is perfect, and we'll get into that a little bit later. For now, if we focus on the wheel for a minute, we'll start with the back. We've got, obviously, the paddle shifters, which I've been told are actually the same paddle shifters that are used in the wheel that are in the GT2 car, so they're exactly the same. You've got the threaded holes for putting the hub on. You've got the pin in there, which is for the quick release system that Cube Controls have. I don't have that, but if you do use that, then that's what that's for. You've got the connection here for the cable, the magnetic one. You've got the on switch and off switch there, and then you've got the connector here for Bluetooth. If you want to use the wheel wirelessly, you can do that. I don't do that, but some people do, and I do get the appeal, so it's nice to have the option. On the front, obviously you've got the AMG logo on the top. On the front, you've got the Mercedes logo there, surrounded by carbon, which is quite cool. You've got all the buttons, which we'll get into when we're driving it on the rig. The grips are quite nice, and generally speaking, it's a pretty simple layout. I mean, simple is nice sometimes. I think the main thing that sticks out for me is the width and like the size of this thing.
Hey, that's what she said.
Like, you got to remember, my head is huge. Like, I get mocked by friends and family for how big my head is, and look how big that wheel is compared to my head. Like, that's really, it's worrying, to be honest. If to give it a bit more context, for those of you that have not seen my head, if you want numbers, this is 320mm wide, which is probably the widest sim racing wheel I've ever seen in terms of a number. The wheel I usually use is this Cube Controls Formula Pro, which is quite an old one. I've used it for about 4 years now, and that's about 280mm. So this is 40mm bigger than that. So that's quite a step up for me today that I'm gonna have to get used to. And just to put them side to side, wait, I can do it better than that. So that is quite a big. That's quite a big difference. I think that's the main thing for me today. Is it too wide? Is it too big for it to be comfortable and consistent to use, especially in something like a Formula car where you have to really react quickly to your steering inputs? But we'll get to that when we're actually driving on the rig. So just a few more facts. The wheel is priced at £792, including VAT, so just under 800 quid basically. So I think, honestly, that's not too bad. Considering it's a collaboration wheel with an official manufacturer like Mercedes-AMG, you would expect more, I think. So I think the price point is pretty good. Obviously, make of that what you will. It's still generally quite expensive. You know, you can get cheaper wheels, put it that way. It weighs 1.3 kilos, so it's not that heavy considering the size of it. Obviously, that doesn't really matter too much when it's on the wheelbase because it's screwed on anyway, but it's always nice to know. I think in terms of general facts, that is pretty much it. That's all I'm going to cover today before we get driving with it. So I think next steps, put the hub on, put it on the wheel, the wheelbase over there, put it on the rig, get ACC loaded up, and give it a whirl. Alright, so before we get driving, I'm going to quickly run through the software side of things. It's not too complicated, so don't worry about that. If I turn it on, beautiful LEDs light up, and there's two softwares you can use, CubeSet, the Cube Controls one, or SimHub. I think SimHub's a bit more advanced. I actually really like SimHub. The Cube Controls one is fine. It has everything you need it to have to be able to use the wheel really well. That's basically default. I've just turned it on for the first time. All the LEDs seem to be working, no problem. What I can do though, I've only got two hands. So if I go into RGB, you can change obviously the encoder pulse width if you really need to. That's universal for all buttons. RGB, you can change all the button colors like so. This is an organizational disaster trying to do this. Right, here we go. So you can literally change them all as you go like that. Lovely jubbly. But you can also change individual buttons, which is probably what I'm going to do. I've already set a little preset here for the Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS Esports Team Pink. So I think I'll probably make every single button that color because that sounds like a cool idea. You save it, no problem. Paddles, you can calibrate the paddles if you're having any issues like double shifts or anything like that. You can update the firmware and then about the firmware as well. So that's the Cube Controls one. Again, simple, but you don't need more than that for me personally. And then for SimHub, you've got obviously a lot more options. You need to add the device, which we do here. So it's got a SimHub default preset, which we can choose here. That's kind of cool. And then within SimHub, you can do so many things, man. I mean, whatever output there is in a game to telemetry, you can basically map that to the wheel. So say if like a yellow flag comes out, you can get the wheel to flash yellow, so your wheel alerts you that there's a yellow flag coming up, or whatever it is, you can do that. And I think it's probably a bit overkill. I mean, it's a steering wheel at the end of the day. Like for me, I just want the buttons the color I want them, and that's it. I don't want any flashing, any distractions. That's not for me, to be honest. The game tells you that anyway, so I don't really know why you'd want that on the wheel, but everyone's different. Everyone has their own way of enjoying sim racing. But as I say, software side of things, super simple. There's no screen to worry about as well, which I actually quite like. I've got a separate dash. I've got the grid dash, which you'll see in a minute is above the steering wheel. And but yeah, that is it. Let's move on. Let's get the wheel on the base and let's do some driving. Okay, so you join me in the rig. The wheel's on the rig, set up, ready to go on ACC. Problem is, little disclaimer, with this angle, I can't actually look at you because the camera's there, the mic's there, and if I look at you and talk, the mic won't pick it up and it's just a bit of a mess. Anyway, you don't really care about looking at my ugly face anyway, that's fine. The only thing that matters is the wheel. That's the whole point of the video. So, we're going to focus on that. So, it was pretty straightforward, getting the hub on, putting it on the SimiCube, the cable running from my PC at the back. I run it to the rig, cable tight to the rig there, pull the coil a bit, cable tie it here to get rid of the slack. Then I've got loads of slack from the wheel to the rig itself. So if I rotate it like that, it's not gonna disconnect this cable. It's not under a lot of tension, which is good. The other thing I noticed as well is that the rim seems off center to the hub. So if you look, like, you can sort of see what I mean. It doesn't look perfectly true to the hub and the wheelbase, which, I don't know, I've just never really seen that before, but I don't think it really matters. It's just a little quirk, I guess. I've got the LEDs set up in the Mercedes-AMG PETRONAS Esports Team Pink, which looks mega. I've got all my stickers on, so we can run through the button mapping very quickly. I've got a DRS button if I need that, pit limiter here, ABS here, TC, engine map on this side, rotary dial, brake bias on this side, rotary dial here, wipers here, mute my headset from Discord here, so when I'm like going into a quali lap, I don't want to talk to the engineers or whoever it is anymore, I'll click that. Headlights turn on here, or cycle through them here. I haven't actually got a button mapped to this one, but I saw on the sticker board there was a skull emoji, so I was like, may as well get that on there somewhere if I can, because why not? Here, this is where I flick through my cycle MFD HUD buttons, so that's right and that's left. Here we've got TC off. If I ever want to override the TC or switch it off completely, I can press this button here depending on the game I'm on. And then in the top left we've got loads of swear words for the symbols, and that's the flasher button. So if I'm coming up behind traffic and I want to flash my headlights really aggressively, I can always go back to this button here and do that. So that is it, apart from these two here, which these are again for the MFD or the HUD when you're flicking through, selecting your next fuel level or selecting new tyres on the pit menu, that sort of stuff. That's when these two dials here come into play. It also interacts with the menu clearly, because I didn't know it was going to do that, but it did. And yeah, that's the way I've got it mapped at the minute. One thing I do want to show you as well is if we go into the car selection bit of ACC a minute, you've got the Mercedes-AMG GT2, which is, this is the replica wheel for this car. And I'll show you exactly what I mean, because when we go in the cockpit, you can see there, it's exactly the same. I mean, it's literally got the Cube Controls logo on it as well. They're running a different button map, and obviously they're not LEDs. But you can clearly see, if you had any worries about it being different, do not worry anymore, because identical. That is kind of cool, that, you know, you can rest assured that anyone driving a real-life GT2 is going to be running this exact wheel. So in terms of what we're going to drive today, we are going to do GT3 at Bathurst. Now the reason I'm using GT3 and not GT2, despite the fact this is a GT2 wheel, GT3 is a bit more enjoyable, it's a bit easier, I'm more used to it, I've got a good setup, or a decent setup. I can get a more accurate feeling, I think, of what this wheel rim does and what it changes to the way I feel the car, because I've done so many more laps in a GT3 than I have a GT2. And obviously Bathurst, the real-life Bathurst race was very recently. Obviously you saw the Mercedes GT3 that got modified by Mercedes-AMG that broke the lap record. It's just it's a track of the moment, and it's one of my favourite tracks as well. So, right, let's get going. Headlights on. So I've not done any laps, by the way. I've not actually driven ACC in a long time, to be fair. It's mainly been iRacing and Le Mans Ultimate for me in previous weeks. But my first sort of feeling is that this is big. And I have actually turned up the force feedback, I think it was 4 clicks, in anticipation that because it's bigger, I'm going to need more force feedback, because I've got effectively, because it's wider, I've got more leverage going through the steering now, so I don't need as much force to actually rotate the wheel. So to compensate for that, I've had to turn the force feedback up. to make it feel the same as it did before on a smaller wheel. That's my logic, and I think it does make sense because the force feedback, despite the fact that I've turned it up 4 clicks, still feels a little bit weaker and maybe a little bit less detailed than it does on my smaller wheel, just because I'm not getting the direct feedback as quickly, I guess, as when I'm on a smaller wheel rim. I've probably picked the worst track here because you have to really concentrate going around Bathurst, but we'll try our best. But in terms of the wheel rim itself, I mean, that button's actually not working. That one is, that's good, but we don't want TC off at the minute. Although in ACC that is the meta, to be fair. So I can reach these two very easily, I can reach these two really easily, I can reach that as I would with any other wheel rim, to be honest. You have to take your hand off to adjust that dial. I can flick through my MFD pretty easily without having to... I'm just thinking if I was in a stint and I don't want to be taking my hands off like that to adjust things. I want to be able to do it very easily. And I think that's pretty straightforward, to be fair. I'm not stretching to get to those buttons there. That's not mapped to anything, but even then that's pretty simple to get down to. Headlights, again, it's just coming down on the grip to adjust that one, muting that mute button there, that's fine. The wipers, to be honest, everything is in, despite the fact it's a huge wheel rim, everything is pretty easy to sort of reach and press, so that's not too bad. That I was worried about that, to be honest. I was worried I'd have to like take my hands off to reach a lot of the buttons, but that's not the case. These rotary dials are pretty nicely placed. My thumbs just can roll over them and change whatever it is you've got it mapped to. Paddle shifters, I mean, they're quite firm and quite loud, but to be honest, any quality wheel these days is the same, really. You're not going to get quiet paddles, but they're quite clunky, so you really feel when you've changed gear, which I think is a good thing. To be honest, I'm liking what I'm seeing in all areas, to be honest. The only thing I'm concerned about is the size. It does change the feeling more than I thought it would, to be honest. Maybe, but to be fair, I haven't driven ACC that much of late, so it might be a little bit of that as well. And like all these things, over time you get used to it, so I'm sure that's not actually going to make you quicker or slower. It's just a case of it feels a little bit different, so you need a bit of time to get used to it. But overall, I'd like to think that I'd be as quick and as consistent on this wheel as I would be on the other wheel. Oh, a bit wide. I think I should be running TC0 for this section, but we'll leave it for today. Not looking to set any world records. And we're going to understeer in the wall. Nope, just avoided it. Ooh. Have I oversteered that? So you can see I'm still able to catch moments and oversteer moments and slides. It just feels weird, my hands being so far apart. I definitely am used to the narrower wheel rim of before that I had. You've got to say though, it is a really, really good looking wheel. Keep looking down at it, just thinking, wow, it does look awesome. Another concern of mine that I'm missing here is the double clutch. especially a lot of the sim racing I do now, especially on iRacing and stuff with standing starts. That is a really valuable thing to have on a wheel rim. So I do miss that, which makes it hard for me to justify using on a daily basis given how much I use a double clutch. Right, let's finish this lap and then we can talk about it. Hold it. Way too deep into that. Okay. I mean, given the temps we're in, it's not a great time, to be honest, but it was enough to get a good feeling. So I think it's something you would be able to get used to, don't get me wrong, the width. But at the minute, given that I drive Formula cars, fast LMP2 cars and LMP prototype cars, GTs as well. So I think for GTs, anything slower than a GT3, including a GT3, I think this would be absolutely fine because you just get used to it. I know it's a bit wider, it feels a bit weird at the minute, but I think over time I get used to it. However, I think anything faster than a GT3, LMP2, LMP1 hypercar, single-seaters, even an F4 and F3 where you have to have absolutely cat-like reflexes, catching oversteer moments, and, you know, because you really push those cars with all the downforce they've got. I don't know. I'd have to try it, but it feels to me like it might be a little bit too wide for those cars. The other thing as well for those cars that usually they're standing starts, and we're missing the double clutch paddles for that, which again is not ideal. And I've got a clutch pedal, don't get me wrong, but in iRacing at the minute on the Super Formula cars, for example, I use the double clutch because using the pedal is just, it wouldn't work as well. So for me, it's those are my two key sticking points really, the width and the clutch pedals. But aside from that, I think it's amazing. I think the look of it, the feel of it, like, it does feel like, it feels nice. Like, it does feel nice. The buttons are nicely laid out. But yeah, overall today, I think that is it. I think, not feeling overly well, as I mentioned earlier, so that will do. That will do. Do give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Sub to the channel if you really enjoyed it. And if you have any questions about the wheel, do get them down below. And yeah, let me know your overall thoughts. You know, obviously it's only a video, but you can still get an opinion from that. So let me know what you think of the Cube Controls Mercedes-AMG wheel. Could it be better? Does it look as good as I'm saying it does? I mean, what I'm seeing right now is it's a 10 out of 10 light in terms of the way it looks. It looks awesome. As always, thank you for watching another one of my videos. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you on a video real soon. Thank you, as always. Take care. Have a good one. See you later.